Hello. I don't know how anxious you are at the moment, how worried about what's in the news, cost of living, war, all sorts of bad news, isn't there? Or how trapped you feel in your situation. Isn't it good to think about finding freedom from it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today in the Good News paper. So stick with us.
Thanks, Colin. Yeah, we've got a really great story on the cover of the July paper. It's a story of a guy called Matthew Fotherington who is lucky to be alive after a drug-induced psychosis nearly killed him. This guy was overdosing on drugs and alcohol, and the story is that when he was at his lowest point in his life, probably, as we say, lucky to be alive, he met God. He heard the preacher Billy Graham preach, and he went on to give his life to God and discover that God was real and that God could turn him around and turn him into the kind of person that he wanted to be. So it's a story of a life changed, of how a guy got his life back after rehab through an encounter with God. True story, really worth reading, makes the front page of the paper this month.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I read that as well, and I thought it was very interesting to see how he has such a bad life. And he talks about how, as a teenager, he was full of resentment and bad attitude, which led him away from his early belief in God. And by his 30s, it says he was a complete mess. He had severe mental health issues and had problems with addiction. And he says that his addiction served as a crutch with his inner brokenness. And it's always funny to me when people sometimes say to me, oh, well, I don't want religion, I don't want Christianity because it's like a crutch. But when I look around me, I see people with all sorts of crutches. And one of the worst crutches can be addiction because it controls and destroys lives. So it's really interesting to see how he was helped. He was helped by the rehab he had, but he had an attitude. He wanted to be helped. How many of us don't really want to be helped? We want to stay with our crutch, our bad crutch perhaps. Yeah. And he says the Bible helped him, and he said he has a support of others that helped him as well, which gave him a purpose and meaning. But it's interesting that the Bible helped him, because a lot of people don't see the relevance of that. What do you think, Andy?
Well, the Bible is, I believe, God's word to mankind. I believe the Bible was it contains God's advice, if you like, on how we should live our lives, and what better advice could there be than to get it from our Creator. So when he talks about his dependence on the Bible and how the Bible helped him and how the Bible instructed him on how to put his life around, absolutely, because the Bible, I believe, is a divinely inspired book that contains the words from God as to how we are to live. So, yeah, absolutely. If you've never read the Bible, by the way, anyone watching this, get hold of a copy. Start with the stories of Jesus and just discover how he changes lives, like he changed this guy's life.
Thanks, Andy. And you've got another story you want to talk about, haven't you?
Yeah, well, one story, there's so many in the paper, but the one that interested me was on page 3. Mark Wahlberg, the actor, some people may not know that he's a Christian. He's been in some great movies. His new movie is called Father Stu. It's a true story about a guy who was a delinquent as a teenager, ended up spending time in prison for criminal behaviour, went on to become an alcoholic and a womanizer and so on. Went off to Hollywood to try and become an actor, but met a young lady. This young lady was a Christian. And in order to impress her, he went to church with her. But in going to church with her, he met with God. He heard that God could change his life. He put his life in God's hands, did this guy. And he went on to become a priest. And Mark Wahlberg's new film is called, as I say, Father Stu. I saw it at the cinema a few weeks ago. It won't be long before it's out on DVD or streaming services. And it's a remarkable film. Terrific performance by Mark Wahlberg as he plays this real-life character. Another guy who was trapped but totally turned his life around and found freedom in God. So that was a story that particularly interested me because I saw the film a few weeks ago and really enjoyed it, Colin. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. And the story that caught my eye was this one about this man who carries this massive wooden cross, a really heavy one, and it's entitled Cross Carrying Clive. I actually know this guy, so he's real. It's not made up at all. And he was caught on Facebook and went viral. And that was something else, and that's why he's in the paper here. He carries this cross, pushes this cross around every year because he wants people to know how important the cross is to him and that it's set him free from so many things. And he talks about how he was saved and there was a time when he was struggling with various issues. He'd been in prison, and he'd had all sorts of drink issues and other things. But he was set free. He said he was set free through faith, and free from the guilt of all the wrong things he'd done and the things that had been done to him. And we can find that freedom too. That's what this issue is all about.
Yeah,
Andy.
Well, the Good News newspaper. If you're a Christian, get hold of a copy, read it, and then pass it on. If you're not a Christian, maybe you're someone who is struggling to think, can I have a relationship with God? Get hold of the paper, read the stories of people who have had a relationship and have discovered that God is real. All sorts of stuff in the paper. You can follow the link at the end of the video. We'll gladly send you a free copy. Paper's bang up to date, so even so, to the extent that on the back, we've got interviews with 2 people that are playing at Wimbledon this week, 2 tennis stars who are also Christians and have discovered that Jesus is real. So get hold of a copy of this, read it, pass it on, and read about people who've had their lives changed by God, an encounter with God. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.